Good morning, boys and girls. Today we are going to read a book called Six Dots, and it is a story of a young boy named Luis Burrell. In this book, you're going to find out that this boy is a problem solver, and this story is also written in a nonfiction narrative, so that it was interesting for us and that we find things. We learned facts, but it's through a story. Braille, if you aren't familiar, it was his last name, but Braille is the type of dots that people use for blind people so that they can learn how to read. So we're going to find out how this man created it and why he created it today. It's also a biography. It gives like kind of the story of his life. So let's find out about Luis, or Lewis, however you want to say it. One day I was born. Papa announced me to the village. "Here is my son, Louis," the neighbors called, clucking their tongues, whispering, "Too small. He won't survive." Oh, but I did survive. I was a curious child, and my eyes studied everything. Man's gentle face, lace draping my cradle, the smooth shape of bread loaf on the table. I grew strong and healthy. When I rode to the baker's on my brother's broad shoulders or fed the chickens with my sisters, the villagers waved and smiled. "So handsome," they cried. "And clever, too," my sister said. At 3, I knew every one in Coupray by name. I counted the eggs in my sister's basket and the sparrows in the trees. I repeated stories I heard, word for word. How would you describe what he was like as a little boy? Would you think he was smart? Was he active? Was he lazy? Did he have to have everything done for him? Go, girls. I would say that it seems to be that he was a pretty smart boy. And he played a lot. And I mean, he did like normal kid things, I think. Shut the door. But what I loved most was to watch Papa work. People came from far away to have a harness made or broken bridle mended. In Papa's hands, the rough leather strips became smooth and useful. I wanted to be just like him, but when I reached for a tool, "No touche, Pas. Don't touch that," Pa warned. Then more gently, "You're too small yet, Louis. Wait until you're older." Too small, those words. I wanted to be bigger, stronger, older. Perhaps if I showed Papa what I could do. The leather was smooth. The awl was sharp. I knew just how to... "Papa!" What do you think just happened? It got a little too brave, I think. My life changed that day. A healer bandaged my eye. Again I heard, "Don't touch." But the bandage itched so much. My hands, like the sparrows in the trees, were small and quick. I couldn't keep them away. I didn't mean to make things worse, but I did. The infection spread to my other eye until... It says, what can you conclude that he did that caused his other eye to become infected? What do you think he was doing that caused that eye to become infected? Yeah, I think he was scratching it and irritating it, and it caused it to get infected. I could see nothing at all. No trees or sparrows, no faces, no laces or loaves of bread. And by the time I turned 5, I was completely blind. The villagers whispered, "Poor Louis Burrell, such a clever boy. What will happen to him now?" My world was dark and dangerous. I stumbled about the house, banging into the chairs, the walls, the door. My body ached. "Where is the sun?" I cried. What do you think the mood is right now in this story? Do you think it's a happy mood, a sad mood? What kind of mood do you think is going on? I think it's kind of like almost like scared mood, sad and scared at the same time, because like his life has just changed and he can't see anything. And I like how the illustrator put those dark pictures on there to show me the darkness that he's seeing in his eyes. But the sun did not come. I sat by the window, training my ears to do what my eyes could not. Cling, bags, kish, kish. That was Papa in his shop. Wish, wish, wish. Long-skirted ladies hurrying to the market. Clomp, clomp, stomp. Soldiers marching down the street. Grrr, ruff. a neighbor's angry dog chained too tight, alone in the dark. And I knew just how he felt. Why do you think the author used all those automatopoeias? He used all those sound words. Why do you think the author did that? Yeah, I think he's trying to show us exactly what the little boy is hearing as he's trying to learn how to hear things and not see them anymore. My family did what they could. Papa made a wooden cane, and each day I walked a little further. Tap, 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 tap. Counting the steps between the house and the garden, the vineyard and the chicken coop, the baker's and the miller's, and back to Papa's shop. My brother taught me to whistle, and when the sound echoed back, it warned me of things in my path. My sisters made a straw alphabet. Papa made letters with leather strips, or by pounding round-topped nails into boards. With Mama, I played dominoes, counting the dots with my fingertips. I think that we can infer right there that he's adapting. The village priest taught me to recognize trees by their touch, flowers by their scent, and birds by their song. I listened carefully as he read to me from the Bible and from books of poetry. Do you have books for blind children? I asked. No, Louis, the priest replied. I'm sorry. When I was older, I went to school with other village children. All day, as they wrote down words and numbers or read out loud from printed pages, I sat in the front row, listening and memorizing. Do you have books for blind children? I asked again. No, Louis, the teacher replied. I'm sorry. But I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. I just wanted to read and to write on my own like everyone else. Has life gotten easier for him, or does he still seem a little frustrated? Yeah, I think he still seems frustrated. I think he's adapted to things, and he's learned how to live, but he's frustrated that he can't read. The Marquis, a noble lady living nearby, heard about me. She wrote a letter to the Royal School for the Blind, asking if I could study there. Finally, a reply came. Welcome, Louis. The priest says they have books for the blind, I told Papa excitedly. You're only 10, Mom cried. And you'll live there for most of the year, my brother added. Paris is a big city, far away, my sisters warned. How could I make them understand without books? I would always be poor Louis Braille. I would always be held back like the dog chained too tight. I love you, I told them, but I must go. From the words, I must go, I can infer that he is a very determined little boy. I didn't need my eyes to know that the Royal School in Paris was not a palace. My hard bed was in a damp, crowded room. My uniform itched and my meals were small and cold. The teachers were strict, and the older boys teased and stole. Oh, how I missed my home. And yet, I stayed. I stayed because somewhere in this old, moldy building, there were books for the blind. Only the best students are allowed to read them, my friend Gabriel told me. Then I will be one of the best, I replied. Learning at the blind school was almost like learning in Couperet. We sat and listened. We memorized and recited. We also had music lessons and made slippers in the workshop. As my fingers flew across the organ keys or between the strips of cloth, I dreamed of reading and writing. I worked and studied as hard as I could. And finally, it was that day. A guide led me to the library. Sit here, he commanded. There was shuffling, grunting, and scraping, and thud. Voila, there it was. Just trace the raised letters with your fingers. It was a long reach to the top of one page. My fingers traced the outline of each letter, just as I had done in Couperet, with straw and leather. But these waxy letters were huge. After reading the first sentence this way, my hand was halfway down the page. A few sentences more, and I had to turn the page. A few more sentences, 2 more pages, and then the end. So that lets me know right there that the books were really short, and I don't think that he wanted a short book. I think he wanted to truly read the way that we do. Is that all? I asked. There are more, but they are just like this one. Words as large as my hand, sentences that took up half a page, I sighed. Even if I had read 100 books like this, how much could I really learn? I skipped supper. I lay in bed wishing I was home. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed that the neighbor's angry dog broke free. He ran to me, licking my face until I laughed and laughed. Louie, get up. Gabriel shook me awake. It was morning. The headmaster wants us. Let's go. Everyone had gathered in the big room. A French army captain has invented a code to send secret messages during battle. The code is read by touch, not by sight, so we might use it here too. You're each holding a message written with patterns of dots. Each pattern stands for a sound such as O or N or Ch. We listened as he explained. It wasn't easy. There was a lot to remember. Flipping my paper over, I moved my fingers from left to right, filling the dots. Fall back, I shouted. Everyone laughed. It was a battle order, of course, but now my heart pounded with hope. I asked for another. Again, I touched the dots. Surprise! Supplies arrive at dawn. Yes, the headmaster cried. The others shouted out their messages too. How are these messages written? I asked. He handed me a slate, a wooden frame with a metal piece in the middle. Slide your paper underneath, he explained. Now take this stylus and be careful. The sharp tool was like the awl in Paul's shop, and I shivered. Use it to punch the code into the paper, he said. I made a few of the complicated dot patterns and flipped the paper to read them by touch. Why do you think it said he shivered right there when he touched that awl? Yeah, I think he had like a flashback memory of what happened, and so it made him a little nervous. So again, Braille is where they put the little dots, and he would touch the dots to learn to read those messages. For weeks, I practiced reading by touch, using dots with a brilliant idea, at least on the battlefield. But for us, the code was so hard that everyone else in the school had given up. Even a short message takes so many dots, and I can't fit a single symbol under my finger, I complained to Gabriel. Plus, the captain's code stands for sounds, not for letters. So what? My friend replied. So why shouldn't we spell words and write sentences like sighted people do? I argued. This code was a start, but it wasn't nearly good enough. We, the blind, were still held back. Would the captain work on improving it with me? I asked the headmaster. I'm sorry, Louie. He isn't interested. Sorry, that word. Why do you think Louie said sorry, that word? Long ago, I had watched Papa take rough leather strips and make them useful. Now I knew what I had to do. Late at night, while the others slept, I bent over my slate and punched the pages. I tried hundreds of ways to simplify the captain's code. I worked until my back was stiff and my fingers ached. Often I fell asleep a few minutes before morning. A year passed, and then another, and that winter I turned 15. I was often sick, but I wouldn't rest. He's still, again, very determined. Finally, it was ready to test. I asked the headmaster to choose something from his own library, a book I'd never heard of before. Please read it out loud, I said. Doctor began, and after a few minutes I interpreted. You can go much faster, sir, he said. I copied down the words, spelling each one correctly. My new code used just 6 dots, arranged in 2 columns like dominoes. Each dot pattern stood for a letter of the alphabet. Finished, he said. I turned my page over. You did it, he shouted. The word spread quickly, and the other students rushed to try it. So easy and so fast! We can read words and write letters like everyone else. As my friends traded messages, I remembered watching Paul in his shop, bent over rough strips of leather, making them useful. I had become just like him, after all. What do you think he means by he had become just like his father, after all? Yeah, I think it means like he worked hard at creating things for other people, just like his dad did. And how do you think he feels about his accomplishments in the end? I think he was probably really excited for himself and his accomplishments. Let's talk about the author's message. What do you think the author wanted me to learn from this book about Louie? I think that life teaches us lessons about determination, creativity, and then believing in yourself. Louie had to really believe in himself to get what he wanted. It also says a big picture that Louie, I think, wanted us to learn. The big idea is that everyone should have tools to read and write, that everyone should have the same equal things.